And now we are at I would say our best segment on the show, my personal favourite, and that is Network and Chill. This is where we look through the best things on the WWE Network and give us our thoughts on it. The WWE Network are currently showcasing this month 30 Days of the Dead Man, and it started with WWE Untold, the Phenom and the Legend Killer, which was just released on Sunday. I watched it last night and wow, I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Anything that goes in depth with Legend Killer Randy Orton is the best thing ever, because Legend Killer Randy Orton is the best thing ever. But I'm not just going to go on about my opinion. I wanted to get the opinion of you, Chris, because you just wrote an exclusive article for SPORF.com because you got early access to it. What did you make of the documentary?
I did, because I am a capital J journalist now. I thought it was awesome. I think what's always very interesting is to see kind of more mature, current-day Randy Orton talk about 24-year-old Randy Orton, because he's self-confessed. He was like, I was a prick back then. I was not a great person. So that's always very interesting in itself. Hearing The Undertaker out of character as well, talking about stuff is always, always very interesting. And I said this in the article. It comes across how much he loves wrestling. Like, there is this kind of, I guess, in-joke in the wrestling community about, like, he'll come back for Saudi Arabia because it's a great payday and all this kind of stuff. But you watch this, and it gives you the legitimate sense that it's got nothing to do with the money or anything like that. He just loves wrestling. I honestly have a feeling that he can't just let it go because it is such a big part of his life, and it's such a big passion for him. I think the feud itself, when you look back at it now, you forget how good it was and how mad it was when you look back from the position we are now to see Randy Orton, knowing what he becomes, to take on The Undertaker, knowing how good the streak will be and all this kind of stuff. They say it themselves in the show. The streak wasn't a thing then. He was just 12-0 or something along those lines at that point. It wasn't a thing that he had a streak. He was just undefeated at WrestleMania. The whole thing works really well. You forget how mad the middle section of the feud is as well and how west it goes. Like, Randy Orton nearly setting himself on fire. We make jokes about there being a second Kane. There was a second Undertaker in this feud. Randy Orton floods the car of a lowrider that he's meant to drive. He's meant to back it up to drive essentially Undertaker into the stage. And he revs the engine, gives it some gas, dramatic effect. And he was saying it's lucky that SmackDown was taped so they could cut out the whole bit of him where he couldn't start the car. But he floods the engine, and the crowd there is giving him so much shit because he's ruined this whole segment for them. The whole thing was West. The Hell in a Cell match is a classic Hell in a Cell match. It's one of those forgotten gems that we talk about. If you haven't seen it, check out this Untold because it's so, so good.
Yeah, I thought it was good as well. Like, I'm reading Chris's review and then watching it. I watched it after Hell in a Cell on Sunday because it played straight away. It's good to see, as Chris said, that other side of Taker. My favourite part is where Randy's giving him a chair shot and he's like full on clocked him on the head, and Taker talks about giving him a receipt, and Randy's like, "Whoa, what?" I think the line was something like, "What the fuck?" And then he later gets that receipt. So yeah, it's a really good watch. And Elliot, you were saying before that you think it's the best Untold so far.
I think so. I don't know if it's just because it's the spectacle of having Undertaker talking, not even really about Undertaker, talking about working with someone else in such great detail, and it not being just focused on him. It's spread a little bit more. I liked that you got Bruce Pritchard on there as well. I liked how it felt. I don't know if it's just because it was quite a long feud. It went on for like about 9 months or so, I want to say. But it just felt like, didn't feel like things were rushed through. It felt like they were focusing on the things as they were going along. And the little stories here and there that I'd never heard about. I didn't know that when that chair shot happens at the beginning, that was inches away from potentially like blinding Undertaker. I assumed that was scripted. Because I was a dumb kid. Little things like that, those little snippets are what make these documentaries worth watching at the end of the day. I mean, Will, what did you think of it?
Yeah, it's just brilliant. Like you've all said, I think brilliant insight as well. And I think I rewatched the Ruthless Aggression Evolution episode, and obviously it ties into Randy Orton getting his first title win, but him just being so out of his depth because he was so young, and then watching that, I almost think that the time that the Undertaker feud came about for him was just so perfect in terms of him growing up in the wrestling business, because you're literally working with like one of the Mount Rushmore of wrestling. And he says, I found it quite surprising. I think it was halfway through the feud in the Hell in a Cell match, he was like, when they were talking about when Undertaker gives him back the receipt, but he's still quite safe with him. And Randy says, "Oh, that's when I learned the best thing to do in wrestling is to be like safe with wrestlers." And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure he's about 2.5 years into his WWE career and he's in a Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker. So I thought that was quite insightful. But yeah, just like Chris said, just for him to look back and just see how much of a dick he was back then, but to still come out on top in some of these matches with The Undertaker is just... I love the way they're filmed. It's like got a nice soundtrack, and yeah, the Untold are just brilliant, and they are always a must watch.
I think there's a very, very good point in that, actually, that we always remember Evolution. I think we have it in our brain that Evolution was the reason Randy Orton became Randy Orton, if that makes sense. But actually, I think Evolution was what made Randy Orton a main eventer. Obviously, he got to travel with Ric Flair, Triple H, Batista. Just being around that would naturally elevate him off the card. But this feud with Taker is what made him a star. For me, this is what took him being from just being a main eventer to being someone that 20 years later on, WWE can still rely on to carry a title feud for 6 months against the first-time champion. This whole feud is very, very underrated.